America, it's Hugh Hewitt. I am joined now by a new guest. Steve Hilton is the architect of the Tories' return to power in Great Britain. He's been called the Karl Rove of the United Kingdom. He has a brand new book out called More Human. He now lives up in Stanford, teaches at Stanford, runs CrowdPack as well. Steve Hilton, welcome to the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Great to be with you.
Now, you attended New College, where I have been a couple of times because I love your chapel at New College so much in evening vespers. What did you study at New College?
It's a beautiful place. I studied philosophy, politics, and economics. Now, I'll tell you one of my favorite stories about that chapel. Talk about thinking for the long term. The guy who designed it and designed the roof, which was made of these massive oak beams, when that was built hundreds of years ago, the guy ordered that oaks be planted nearby so that when the time came to repair the roof, they would have a fresh supply of trees to repair the beams in that very chapel.
I did not know that. I will tell you, I was sent there by Dr. Larry Aron, president of Hillsdale College, because he said evening vespers there will be 5 people there and a men's choir, boys aged 6 to 65, and they will enchant you. And indeed they did every single night, and it's open to the public. So New College is high on my list of favorites. Now tell us, Steve, how you got into politics and the role you played with the Tories.
Well, many years ago I worked as a very junior researcher. I actually saw a TV commercial for the Conservative Party when Margaret Thatcher was still Prime Minister, and I wanted an interesting vacation job, so I interned with the party and then took a job as a junior researcher and worked alongside a young guy called David Cameron, who became a good friend, and we stayed in touch over the years. I did various other things outside politics, like starting a business, and then when it came to the time that he got elected to Parliament and then eventually decided to run for the leadership, and I helped run his campaign, and then when we won, he was very much the outsider. He started off with 3% in the polls for the leadership race, but eventually won. And then together we set out an agenda for modernizing conservatism, and the rest goes from there. We won the election in 2010. He became Prime Minister, and we started implementing a reform program which is the basis for some of the ideas in my book, More Human. But actually what I've really done since moving to California 4 years ago is reflect on what we got wrong and how we didn't go far enough in the reforms that we tried to implement. And so what I've really done is now write that down as if you like, a manifesto for how we can implement a reforming conservative agenda here in America.
Now, I want to talk about More Human a little bit after the break, but I wanted to speak with you this morning about one question in particular. In 1992, John Major won re-election as Britain's prime minister and surprised everyone, and there became a term known as the shy Tory. Tories who would not poll and would not say they were going to vote for him. Do you think, Steve Hilton, that the shy Tories in America in 2016 are Democrats who are afraid to say out loud that they're for Donald Trump, or are they Republicans afraid to admit that they will vote for Hillary over Donald Trump?
I think it's definitely the former. I think it's that phenomenon is typically one where the mainstream media takes a view that it is socially acceptable or unacceptable to have a particular position. And right now in America, it seems to me that the support for supporting Donald Trump is the example of that position, where in certain quarters it is not socially acceptable to express that view. And that is why I think that the phenomenon definitely relates to those Democrats and others who secretly support Trump but don't feel it's okay to say so.
So do you think he can beat a lot of Republicans? I've been doing the show for 15 years. I was a Reaganite. I know and love the Republican Party. A lot of Republicans are sincerely afraid of getting wiped out in November if Donald Trump is the nominee. Are they wrong? We got a minute to the break, Steve Hilton.
I think they are wrong. I think that he will be a very, very formidable candidate. I'm not saying he can definitely win, but I think the idea that he'll be wiped out is completely wrong. He has shown he's got a message that really connects with the heart of Americans, and that's the most important thing.
When we come back from break, we'll talk with Steve Hilton about his book, More Human, and how conservatism, whether of the Trump variety or the Cruz variety, makes itself acceptable and actually effective in broader ways than anyone had ever imagined. Steve Hilton is my guest. He's the Karl Rove of the United Kingdom. He founded CrowdPack, which is a tech startup up in Stanford. We'll talk more about the race and about More Human when we return. Stay tuned, America. It's the Hugh Hewitt Show. Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you by Hillsdale College. Visit hughforhillsdale.com. 33 minutes after the hour, America, it's Hugh Hewitt on the morning after Donald Trump wins 5 primaries. He has amassed 1,001 delegates. I'm giving him New Jersey's 51 delegates because that's in the bag. He needs 1,237. Where does he find those 236? Well, he's not going to win Nebraska, South Dakota, or Montana. He's going to get a few in West Virginia, Oregon, Washington, New Mexico, but he's got to win Indiana, and he's got to win California by big margins, or it's an open convention. Joining me on the phone from Stanford this morning, Steve Hilton, longtime advisor to David Cameron, the Prime Minister of Great Britain, the author of the new book, More Human. He has a perspective on American politics which is unique, forged in Great Britain and then refined in the Silicon Valley. In More Human, Steve Hilton, what do you suggest conservatives do? What would you suggest Donald Trump do to advance their likelihood of winning in the fall?
I think that the success of Trump's message shows that the Americans are really frustrated with the way things are working. But if they're not going to be frustrated all over again, that has to be turned into an agenda for reforming government and reforming the economy that is, frankly, more than just building a wall. And I think that what it needs, that agenda needs to understand that at the heart of all this frustration is that things, whether that's in government or the economy or in wider society, have just got too big and bureaucratic and distant from the human scale. And so what I think the policy agenda going into the election and then coming out of it in government needs to do is to take all this power that has been centralized, whether that's over the economy in the form of giant corporations or in government in Washington, take this power that's been centralized and put it back into people's hands by breaking things up and moving power closer to people so that they are more in control of the things that matter to their lives. And so that's the way I think we can make things more human, and that is for me, a fundamentally conservative principle, that it's also in line with the times where, if you see what's going on in technology, that is all about empowering people, putting information and power in their hands. And so, to me, this is a very modern way of looking at the world that is totally different from the centralizing bureaucratic approach of the Democrats.
Now, it's interesting. Ted Cruz last night in Indiana, Steve Hilton, had this to say about Donald Trump's approach and why he contrasts it with his own and perhaps with yours. Cut number 15.
Bringing manufacturing jobs back to the state of Indiana. Raising wages for the hardworking men and women of this country. But it's interesting. Donald Trump on jobs, Donald and Hillary both agree that our taxes should be increased. Last week, Donald Trump went on national television and said, yes, we should increase jobs. Well, that's a great idea. Increase taxes. That's a great idea if you want to kill jobs. If I'm president, we're going to cut taxes. Second critical area under jobs, Donald and Hillary both support the Obamacare individual mandate. Both of them think it's a terrific idea. Now, if you care about jobs, you know that Obamacare is the biggest job killer in America. And as president, I will repeal every word of it.
So Steve Hilton, he goes on to say Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton are the same person. That's his argument on policy terms. A, is he correct? And B, will that work in Indiana and, more importantly, in the state we both live in, California?
I don't think that we know enough, frankly, about either of their policy agendas to really know. I think that's the problem. The message is very clear, but what's he actually going to do? I think that, and some of the things that we've heard about are pretty superficial. What I'm talking about is something much more fundamental, a complete rethinking of the way we do things. I'll give you a couple of examples. In education and schools, for example, there's a debate going on which focuses, to me, on something very superficial, which is the Common Core. Well, the debate is whether that should be done, whether curricula should be decided at the federal level or the state level. That is totally superficial. What we need is to completely reinvent the school system so that we take power out of the hands of the bureaucrats and the government, put it directly into the hands of parents. We need a complete market-based school system where anyone can come and set up a school and offer services to the local community, and parents can choose between them, so that you have a situation where in every neighborhood, it's not just one local school and maybe one charter school as an alternative, but every parent has the choice of 20, 30 different schools right on their doorstep that can tailor education to every child, because that's what we need to be a successful society and economy in the 21st century, to get away from this kind of factory schooling system that is run by the government. And right through the policy issues, we need that kind of real revolutionary rethinking of the way we organize things that I don't see coming from any of the candidates.
Well, that is very Tony, Steve Hilton, very persuasive to someone like me and to, I'm sure, the intellectual conservatives of Washington, D.C., Yuval Levin and Jonah Goldberg and the rest. But here's the rhetoric and the reality. This is Donald Trump last night as he wins and wraps up his press conference, cut number one.
Well, I think the only card she has is the woman's card. She's got nothing else going. And frankly, if Hillary Clinton were a man, I don't think she'd get 5% of the vote. The only thing she's got going is the woman's card. And the beautiful thing is women don't like her, okay? And look how well I did with women tonight, okay? So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Steve Hilton, if David Cameron, your one-time client, had been using rhetoric like that, what would you advise him?
I think it's such a distinctive thing to Trump. I can see the appeal of it. But as I say, what I really worry about is that people are going to vote for that, and then 4 years down the line, nothing has really changed, and they're going to be even more frustrated and even more angry. And so, in a political campaign, of course, to persuade people to vote for you, you've got to put out a simple message that people can understand. I totally get that, but that has to be backed up by an agenda for change. Otherwise, you're going to waste the time that you're in government, and nothing much will happen. We've seen that time and time again, and I don't see that any of the candidates' campaigns are offering the kind of fundamental reform that I describe in More Human.
Now, Steve,
I think that we need to see. Otherwise, nothing really is going to change. That's what we've seen for the last, frankly, not just the last 8 years, but the last 3 or 4 decades, where what you've actually seen happen in the world is a kind of technocratic elite has taken over the world that basically favors big business over small, that is for globalization at any cost, that prioritizes efficiency at any price, and that is completely callous and inhuman about the effect of this on real people. That's what needs to be overturned, and I think that overturning that is a real conservative mission.
Now, it would be malpractice on my part if I had a former Cameron advisor on and did not ask you about Brexit, because the exit of Great Britain from the European Union would seem to be more human to me. It would be saying to the United Kingdom, we are going our own path. We're going smaller and away from Brussels and away from centralized control, back to shared sovereignty with our United Kingdom fellow states. What do you think?
Well, Hugh, first of all, I think that a lot of people have made that point, and it's also true that even those who argue for staying in the EU, like David Cameron, are as frustrated as I am and have been by the way that the European Union kind of gets involved in a bureaucratic way in the way government works and the way the economy works in the UK. So it's always a trade-off. My view on this is that it's such a big issue and it's such a big decision that I feel like I don't want to wade into it from America, from afar, and I want to be there to talk to people about it. So I'm not going to express a view, I'm afraid, until I'm actually in the UK.
Now, are you still voting in the United Kingdom?
I haven't for a while, actually. I've been in California 4 years. I feel I have a green card now, and I'm heading towards citizenship, and I feel very much part of this country now and see my future here.
So will you go back to Great Britain to cast a ballot on Brexit?
I think I will not, actually. I've literally just agreed, I think, to do an event here in California on the day of the vote. So my focus is 100% on America.
Okay, I have to press you on this because that's what journalists do. You're a senior Cameron advisor. It's going down. It looks like Brexit's going to win and the exit's going to happen. If you're advising Cameron today, how do you get him to turn that around against Boris and sort of the popular revulsion at President Obama's intervention on behalf of the European Union?
Yeah, I do agree with you that intervention was a mistake because the British people do not like being threatened, even by their closest ally, which is effectively what Obama did. I think that the trouble with the campaign and the reason that it's going the way you describe is that actually both sides are using insultingly simplistic language to describe what is a very complex decision where it's not black and white. There is a trade-off to be made. And both sides are making out that it is completely clear, and the world will end if people vote the other way. And I think no one's persuaded by that. And that's why people are just shunning the whole thing, and that could help those who want to leave, I think, because the whole feeling around the whole campaign is negative.
Now, I want to close by asking you about volatility. And in More Human, obviously, you talk about rapid technological change. I think volatility in politics is at an all-time scale. Do you see that impacting this race between now and November? I mean, wild swings between Hillary Clinton and whether or not it's Cruz or Trump?
I don't think so, to be honest with you. I think that I think the reason for that is that both of those candidates are so well known now that people's views are pretty much set. And I think that in the end, the campaign will come down to this, the fundamental, almost emotional sense of who's going to bring about the biggest change, because it's clear that they want big change. And that's why, coming back to your very first question, I think Trump has much more of a chance than people give him credit for, should he be the nominee, because he does represent the kind of disruptive change that I think people really want to see.
Always a pleasure to meet a new friend, Steve Hilton. I hope you'll come back early and often. More Human is his brand new book. It's in bookstores everywhere, available at Amazon.com. More Human. Thank you, Steve. Hi, this is Hugh Hewitt. Thank you for stopping by my YouTube channel. Click right here to watch previous ones that you may not have seen, and click right here to subscribe to get all of them. And this is what you really need to do, is click right here to subscribe. Thanks for coming by. Don't miss a minute of any of the Hugh Hewitt YouTubes.